I'm going to present a topic today which is really dear to my heart about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a hallmark of leadership. I'm going to talk briefly about the books, about the life of the Prophet, some of the books, and in details about the research by James Gauzes and Barry Bosner, and the 5 practices of exemplary leadership that stemmed from this research. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is an outstanding example of role model who succeeded in his mission because of his superior morality and personal qualities. He was both exalted and humble and had the ability to create and communicate a believable strategic vision and inspired his companion. Yet at the same time, he was dedicated at the service of his people. I will argue that good leadership is a decision of someone who has clear vision of great cause and inspires people or followers who believe what he or she believes and helps them to build a world that is better for all. I thought of the approach of synthesizing the advanced knowledge in modern leadership science with the leadership examples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and verify that the Prophet can be the single role model of leadership, even based on academic leadership studies. Over the years, Muslim scholars have written so many books about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, highlighting the divinely guided qualities of his personality as the final messenger of God, presenting him as a role model. When the rationalist school of Islamic thought has emerged, thinkers like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and Shibli Nomani in India and Sheikh Muhammad Abdu and Rashid Rida in the Arab world tend to explore the rationalist and humanist dimensions of the personality of the Prophet more from a human perspective. They also explored all the dimensions of his personality. The Prophet Muhammad as statesman, as a political leader, as spiritual guide. Also, non-Muslim historians have written many, many books about the Prophet as a leader. Their interpretations are formed by many categories that focused on examining Prophet Muhammad as a charismatic leader as well as being the messenger of God. In his book, The 100, a ranking of the most influential person in history, Michael Hart ranked the Prophet Muhammad as the most influential persons in history. Hart asserted that he was supremely successful as a leader in both religious and secular realms. Also, the scholar of management and leadership John Adair wrote a book titled The Leadership of Muhammad. This book joins a collection of work about the Prophet, but Adair's interpretation is different from most biographers of Prophet Muhammad in a way that emphasizes the context in which he lived over abstract moral principle. Adair, who served with Bedouin regiment in the Arab Legion, emphasizes the context of tribal practices and the day-to-day habits and tradition that had an influence on Prophet Muhammad. He shows how Prophet Muhammad's understanding of the tribal norms and of Arabia helped him become an inspirational leader as well as an effective manager. Just within a short time, 23 years, he succeeded in transforming the Arabs from a nation of failure and ignominy, competing later with the 2 great powers of the world, Persia and Rome, to a nation of substance and civilization on the world scene. He accomplished this unprecedented achievement within this short time. The mentioned books and many, many more are examples of the traditional way to study and explore the life of the Prophet and his traits. But when we discovered that the nickname of the Prophet, As-Sadiq Al-Amin, which means truthful and trustworthy, the trait of an exemplary leader was regarded as the hallmark of leadership by a meticulous research done by the 2 leadership scholars, James Gauzes and Barry Bosner, it becomes a pleasant surprise since this trait relates to something sacred to us as Muslims. In fact, the Prophet was called As-Sadiq Al-Amin even before the revelation. Even the disbelievers in Mecca acknowledged him likewise and called him by this salutation. Research, practice, and publication about leadership are vibrant and very, very advanced in nowadays. Researchers and scholars have developed many theories, rules, and principles in the field of leadership. Yet, The research of Kouzes and Bosner is one of the deepest meaningful research on the topic of leadership. It is a benchmark of leadership research. Every study on leadership is benchmarked against this study. Out of their research, Kouzes and Bosner published a book titled Credibility is the Foundation of Leadership. They explain that credible leader is someone who is truthful and trustworthy. This hallmark of leadership is universal because it's a global and cross-generation. When a leader exemplifies these two characteristics, this book is a result of continuous research of a period of 25 years. Kouzes and Bosner have introduced a new set of universal leadership practices of leadership. The leadership models, concepts, and practices proposed in this book are supported by reliable empirical data, which is global and covers various levels of leadership, from CEOs to managers to leaders, to board directors, and also various types of leadership from schools, community organizations, companies, business and government, sports, all the fields. I have looked at the primary characteristic of leadership that the two researchers studied from the responses of more than 1.5 million individuals across 6 countries. Among the question they asked was, what are the characteristics you like to see in the leader that you follow willingly? The first results of the study appeared in 1998, and the research continued for 25 years. Since the first tabulation of the results, the primary preferred characteristic of leadership has not changed. In the second edition of their book, Credibility, published in 2010, the authors highlighted that credibility is the foundation of leadership. In this book, they clarified the meaning of credibility through various examples and statements. They said, being seen as someone who can be trusted, who has high integrity, and also who is honest and truthful is essential to being believed. Credibility then is about truthfulness and honesty. They are two primary characteristics binding on anyone who leads others without force. But if the Prophet Mohamad, peace be upon him, is the best example of credibility, did he also exemplify the other practices of exemplary leadership as articulated by Kouzes and Bosner? I will state the 5 practices of exemplary leadership and then append examples from the biography of the Prophet that relate to each one of them to be able to answer this question. Let's start with the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So, model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. The first one is model the way. The most important personal quality people look for and admire in a leader is personal credibility. This is about credibility. It's about values. It's you walk the talk. Credibility is the foundation of leadership. If people don't believe in the messenger, they won't believe the message. Titles may be granted, but leadership is earned. Leaders model the way by finding their voices and setting an example. So it's about values, principle, and lead by example. Leaders are supposed to stand up for their belief, and they must be clear about their guiding principles and values. Modeling the way begins with the clarification of personal values and involves building, affirming shared values that all can embrace. That was the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he came. He did that. He changed the values of each one of the companion, and then to change the akhlaq of the society in the end. In regard of the honesty and integrity, the Prophet built a reputation of honesty and integrity in the trade milieu among people in the Arabian Peninsula. Also, when he conquered Mecca, he did without bloodshed. In the 21st year of his prophethood, he asked the people in Mecca, the unbelievers who were awaiting his decision, how they thought he was going to deal with them. They replied, noble brother, son of noble brother. At this moment, the Prophet, peace be upon him, recalled the story that happened with the Prophet Yusuf when he was reunited with his brothers who had plotted to kill him. Then he acclaimed, go on, you are free. Unlike common victors in history who inflict all sorts of punishment on the vanquished, the Prophet Mohamad, in the highest spirit of chivalry, not only gave his enemy a general amnesty, but extended toward them a hand of fellowship. thereby welding the whole society into a solid brotherhood and sisterhood, inaugurating a new era of good moral and social justice. Another example, when a prophet agreed to the term of condition in the peace treaty imposed by the Quraysh tribe at Hudaybiyah, many of his companions were profoundly upset with him, seeing the terms were favorable to the enemy. All of his companions refused to obey a direct command of his, which was to make the sacrifices and complete some of the ritual of Hajj. Prophet Mohamad, saddened and worried by this development, retreated to his tent when his wife Salama advised him to go back out and silently perform the very acts he had ordered. When his companions saw him lead by example, they immediately followed him, and a major mutiny was averted. So this example confirmed that the Prophet, peace be upon him, lead by example and also respect the voice of women. Number 2 is inspire a shared vision. People will not follow until they accept a vision as their own. Leaders cannot commend commitment. They can only inspire this vision. What may begin as my vision emerges as our vision. Inspiring vision paints future greatness related to the ambition of people. The hallmark of visionary leader is that the followers truly trust and believe in his vision. They continue to work and aspire to realize the vision even long after his death. Such were the vision of Islam that Prophet Mohamad described. While in conditions of great difficulties from the enemies of Islam in Mecca, with some Muslims under great tortures, the Prophet predicted the future vision where Muslims will be victorious. Habab ibn al-Arat, the companion of the Prophet, mentions the vision of future peace even from the early days of Islam in Mecca. He said, "By Allah, what Allah's messenger foretold that day have all come true. I have personally witnessed it all." Now, challenge the process. Those who lead others to greatness seek and accept challenge. Leaders are pioneers. They are willing to step out into the unknown. The work of leaders is to change. They search for opportunities to innovate, to grow, to improve. Therefore, leaders must remain open to receiving ideas from anyone and anywhere. The leader's primary contribution is the ability to lead through major challenges, but they learn from the mistakes and failure and encourage others to do the same. Leaders understand that the key that unlocks the door to opportunity is learning, especially in the face of obstacles. Let's take an example. The number of people who become Muslims till before the time of Hijrah, which is the migration to Medina, was 150 people in 13 years. That's 12 people a year. 70 of them migrated to Abyssinia when the situation was becoming extremely difficult, and while Muhammad, peace be upon him, was still delivering God's message patiently in the climate of rejection and persecution. He had to look for the protection, for a new opportunity, protection for the Muslims. Therefore, he asked a group of Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia, where there is a Christian king well known for his justice. So only 80 migrated to Medina. But before that, what happened? Before the migration to Medina, the Prophet decided to search for new opportunity. On the 10th year of revelation, 3 years before the migration to Medina, he went to Ta'if, but he was denied this opportunity, and he went back after all the suffering. He was stoned by children to the point where blood drenched his leg. Number 4, enable others to act. Leaders enable others to act by fostering collaboration and strengthening others. Good leaders know that teamwork, trust, and empowerment are essential to strengthening everyone's capacity to deliver on promises. Collaboration is a master skill that enables teams, partnership, and other alliances to function effectively. So leaders engage all those who must make the project work, and in some way, all those who must live with the results. At the very heart of cooperation is trust. Leaders help create and trust in climate. They understand that mutual respect is what sustains extraordinary efforts. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was blessed with great followers who believed in the noble cause of Islam and were actively committed to it. This is evidenced by their willingness to sacrifice their wealth and lives while obeying his commands. The strongest proof of their commitment is to zealously pursue the same mission and vision after the death of the Prophet. Number 5, encourage the heart. Leaders encourage the heart by recognizing contributions and celebrating values and victories. Exemplary leaders set high standards and have high expectation of their people when it comes to reading a person's character and understanding their unique strengths and weaknesses. And he used to encourage the companions in different ways. For example, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari radiallahu anhu was known for his piety and knowledge of the Quran and Hadith. Yet the Prophet advised him not to excel in this field and not to take any leadership position because he doesn't know how to lead. Likewise, the Prophet was quick to recognize the strength of Khalid ibn al-Walid and did not hesitate to appoint him to lead Muslim army just after a few months of embracing Islam. Both Usama and his father, Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhum, were acknowledged for their natural leadership by the Prophet. Usama's case was really spectacular. Although Usama was young, the Prophet sent an army under his command, and this expedition was strategic and important, and many senior companions were put under his command, including the great leaders Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. When the companion criticized this decision, the Prophet defended him, and he confirmed that he was worthy of leadership. So that's the 5 practices of exemplary leader. Now for the conclusion. The mentioned example and a lot more in the seerah. I couldn't mention more from the example because of the time, but we have thousands of examples about these 5 practices of leadership. So all of them confirm that the Prophet is the hallmark of leadership, even based on academic leadership studies. He exemplified the well-articulated rules, characteristics, and practices of leadership, and he was ornamented with peerless attributes of perfection. And verily, you are on exalted standard of character. Sadaqallah al-Azim. Thank you so much for attention.